The gunshot that rang out through the November night was meant for her, but the bullet had missed by inches. And now Rebecca Owens ran through the darkness with nothing but the clothes on her back and terror driving her forward. She had been traveling with a wagon train heading west from Missouri to California, hoping to start fresh after her parents died of cholera the previous spring. At 22 years old, she had nothing left in St. Louis but memories and heartache. The wagon master, a man named Dutch Carver, had seemed respectable enough when she paid him the last of her inheritance to secure passage. But 3 weeks into the journey, his true nature revealed itself. He wanted more than just her money. When she refused his advances, he grew violent, and when she fought back, striking him across the face with a cast iron skillet, he pulled his gun. That was when she ran. Now, stumbling through the Texas brush in the pitch black, her dress torn and her arms bleeding from thorns, Rebecca had no idea where she was going. She only knew she had to keep moving. The temperature had dropped significantly after sunset, and she had no coat, no supplies, nothing to keep her warm. Her teeth chattered so violently she worried someone might hear them, though she had not heard pursuit for at least an hour. The terrain grew rockier, and twice she fell, scraping her palms raw. Her lungs burned with each gasping breath, but fear kept pushing her onward. When she finally saw a fence line in the distance, illuminated by the pale moonlight, she nearly wept with relief. Where there was a fence, there had to be people. Where there were people, there might be safety. She followed the fence line for what felt like miles, her legs trembling with exhaustion, until she saw the dark outline of buildings ahead. A ranch. The main house sat back from the road, but closer to where she stood, she could make out a wooden gate. Her vision swam, and she realized how cold she had become. The shivering had progressed from uncomfortable to dangerous, her whole body shaking uncontrollably. Rebecca tried to call out, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. Her strength finally gave out, and she collapsed against the gatepost, unable to take another step. The cold seeped into her bones, and she wrapped her arms around herself, trying desperately to generate warmth. Through her fading consciousness, she thought she saw a light come on in the distance, but she could not be sure if it was real or just wishful thinking. Trevor Owens woke to the sound of his dog barking. Duke, a large mixed breed he had found as a starving puppy 5 years ago, rarely barked at night unless something was wrong. Trevor sat up in bed, listening. Duke's barking grew more insistent, and Trevor heard him scratching at the front door. All right, Trevor muttered, climbing out of bed and pulling on his trousers. He lit a lamp and grabbed his rifle from beside the door, more out of habit than any real expectation of danger. At 26 years old, he had been running this ranch outside Brownsville, Texas, for 4 years now, ever since his father died and left him the property. In all that time, the most excitement he had experienced was chasing off the occasional coyote. He opened the door and Duke bolted out into the darkness, still barking. Trevor followed more cautiously, holding the lamp high. "Duke, what is it, boy?" The dog ran toward the front gate, and as Trevor got closer, his lamplight fell on something that made his heart skip. A woman was collapsed against his gatepost, her body shaking violently, her dress torn and muddy, her dark hair tangled with twigs and leaves. "Jesus!" Trevor breathed, setting down his rifle and rushing forward. He knelt beside her, touching her shoulder gently. Miss, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused and glassy. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint, and when he touched her skin, it was ice cold. She tried to speak, but only a small whimper emerged. Trevor did not hesitate. He scooped her up into his arms, surprised by how light she felt, and carried her quickly toward the house. Duke trotted alongside, whining with concern. Once inside, Trevor laid her on the couch near the fireplace and immediately set about building up the fire. The embers from earlier in the evening still glowed, and within minutes he had a good blaze going, but she was still shaking violently, her wet and torn dress doing nothing to warm her. Trevor knew about hypothermia from his years ranching through Texas winters. He had to get her warm and dry and fast. He grabbed several quilts from the chest in his bedroom, then paused, realizing he needed to get the wet clothes off her first. It felt wrong, invasive, but he knew it was necessary to save her life. "Miss, I am sorry, but I need to get you out of these wet things," he said, even though she seemed barely conscious. He worked as quickly and respectfully as possible, averting his eyes as much as he could while removing her torn dress and muddy undergarments. He wrapped her immediately in the thick quilts, then pulled the couch closer to the fire. For the next several hours, Trevor stayed by her side, stoking the fire, checking her breathing and watching as the color slowly returned to her face. He heated water and used clean cloths to gently clean the cuts and scratches on her arms and legs, applying salve to the worst of them. Her feet were badly blistered and bleeding, as if she had run for miles. As dawn approached, her shivering finally began to subside, and she fell into what looked like a more natural sleep. Trevor sat back in his chair, exhausted but relieved. Who was she? Where had she come from? And what had she been running from? He looked at her face, peaceful now in sleep, and felt something stir in his chest that he had not felt in a long time. For years, he had lived alone out here, content with his solitude, or so he told himself. His nearest neighbor was miles away, and he went into town only when necessary for supplies. After his father died and his mother followed 6 months later from grief, Trevor had thrown himself into the work of the ranch, using the physical labor to avoid dealing with his loneliness. But looking at this woman now, vulnerable and hurt, something in him had shifted. The moment he picked her up and carried her inside, it was as if a door he had kept firmly locked had suddenly opened. When Rebecca finally woke, the sun was streaming through windows and she was warm. Confused, she opened her eyes and found herself in an unfamiliar room, lying on a couch near a fireplace, wrapped in quilts. For a moment, panic seized her as she remembered running through the dark, remembered Dutch Carver's gun, remembered the cold. But then she noticed she was safe, she was warm, and someone had tended to her wounds. She sat up slowly, clutching the quilts to her chest, and looked around. The room was simple but well kept, with solid furniture and clean floors. Through an open doorway she could see into a kitchen where a man stood with his back to her, working at the stove. He must have heard her movement because he turned around. He was tall, with brown hair and kind eyes, his face showing concern. "You are awake. How are you feeling?" Rebecca's throat was dry and her voice came out raspy. "Where am I? My ranch, just outside Brownsville," he said, approaching slowly as if afraid to startle her. "I found you collapsed at my gate last night. You were half frozen. I am Trevor Owens." "Rebecca," she managed to say. "Rebecca Owens." His eyebrows rose slightly at the shared surname. "No relation, I assume." "No," she said, then suddenly became aware that she was naked under the quilts, her face flushed hot. "My clothes?" "I am sorry about that," Trevor said quickly, his own face reddening. "They were soaked and torn. I had to get them off you to warm you up. You were in bad shape. I tried to be respectful about it." Rebecca could see the genuine embarrassment and concern in his face, and she believed him. "Thank you. You saved my life." "What happened to you?" Trevor asked gently. "How did you end up out there?" The memories came flooding back, and Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "I was with a wagon train heading to California. The wagon master, he tried to force himself on me. When I fought back, he pulled a gun. I ran." Her voice broke. "I just ran. I did not even know where I was going." Trevor's jaw tightened with anger. "Dutch Carver?" Rebecca looked up sharply. "You know him, of him. He has a bad reputation, but people still hire him because he is cheap. He should be run out of Texas." Trevor took a breath, clearly trying to control his anger. "You are safe here. He would not dare come onto my property, and even if he did, he would regret it." Something about the quiet certainty in Trevor's voice made Rebecca believe him. She relaxed slightly. "I do not have anything. All my things were in the wagon, my money, my clothes, everything." "Do not worry about that right now," Trevor said. "First, you need to rest and heal. I will see if I have something you can wear. My mother was about your size. After she passed, I kept some of her things." He disappeared into another room and returned with a simple cotton dress in a faded blue color. "It is not fancy, but it is clean and warm." "It is perfect," Rebecca said, taking it gratefully. "Thank you." Trevor nodded and retreated to the kitchen to give her privacy. Rebecca dressed quickly, her hands still shaking slightly, though now from emotion rather than cold. The dress fit reasonably well, perhaps a bit loose but comfortable. She stood on unsteady legs, her blistered feet protesting, and made her way to the kitchen. Trevor had set out a plate of eggs and bacon, along with coffee and fresh bread. The smell made Rebecca realize how hungry she was. She could not remember the last time she had eaten. "Sit," Trevor said, pulling out a chair for her. "You need to eat." Rebecca sat and began eating, trying not to appear too desperate, but she was ravenous. Trevor sat across from her with his own plate, giving her space but staying close enough to help if she needed it. "How long was I unconscious?" Rebecca asked between bites. "Most of the night and into the morning. It is almost noon now." "I should leave," Rebecca said, though the thought of going back out there terrified her. "I have imposed on you enough. Leave and go where?" Trevor asked practically. "You have no money, no supplies, and you are in no condition to travel. Besides, Carver might still be looking for you." Rebecca felt her chest tighten with anxiety. She had not thought about that. Of course he might be looking for her. She had struck him and run away. A man like that would not let such an insult stand. "I can protect you here," Trevor said, his voice gentle but firm. "And you can stay as long as you need to. I have plenty of space." "I cannot just stay here for free," Rebecca protested. "It would not be right." "Then earn your keep," Trevor suggested. "The place could use a woman's touch. I am not much for cooking or cleaning beyond the basics. If you help around the house while you heal up, we will call it even." Rebecca considered this. It was a generous offer, perhaps too generous. But what choice did she have? She had nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to, and something about Trevor made her feel safe. Despite the circumstances of how they met, despite him having to undress her while she was unconscious, she did not feel threatened by him. In fact, she felt the opposite. She felt protected. "All right," she agreed. "But only until I can figure out what to do next. I do not want to burden you." "You are not a burden," Trevor said simply, and the way he looked at her when he said it made something flutter in her chest. Over the next few days, Rebecca settled into life at the ranch. Her strength returned gradually, and as it did, she began taking over the household tasks. She cooked meals that were far better than Trevor's basic fare, cleaned the house thoroughly, and even started mending his clothes, many of which had tears and missing buttons. Trevor spent his days working the ranch. He had cattle and horses, and though he employed 2 ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse, there was always more work to be done. Rebecca watched him sometimes from the window as he worked, noting the easy way he moved, the care he took with the animals, the patience he showed when breaking a new horse. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. Trevor told her about his life, about losing his parents, about the challenges of running the ranch alone. Rebecca told him about growing up in St. Louis, about losing her own parents, about the dreams she had for starting fresh out west. "You still could, you know," Trevor said one evening about a week after she had arrived. "Start fresh. You do not have to go all the way to California to do it." Rebecca looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "I mean Brownsville is not a bad place to start over. It is growing. There are opportunities." "For a single woman with no money and no family," Rebecca asked skeptically, "you could work in town. The general store is always looking for help, or the school needs a teacher." "I have no teaching certificate. Out here, no one cares about certificates. If you can read and write and do arithmetic, that is enough." Rebecca considered this. She had been so focused on the idea of California, of the destination, that she had not considered that maybe home was not a place you traveled to, but a place you made. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked suddenly. "You do not know me. I could be anyone. I could be a thief or a liar." Trevor was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. "Because I know what it is like to be alone. After my parents died, I thought I wanted to be alone. I thought if I just kept working, kept myself busy, I would be fine. But this past week, having you here, it has made me realize how lonely I actually was." Rebecca's heart beat faster. "Trevor, I am not trying to make you uncomfortable," he said quickly. "I am just being honest. You can stay here as long as you want, and there are no expectations. But I would be lying if I said I had not been happier this week than I have been in years." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "I have been happier too. This past week, despite everything that happened to get me here, I have felt more at home than I have since my parents died." They looked at each other across the firelight, and something unspoken passed between them. It was too soon for declarations, too soon for promises, but both of them felt it. Something was growing between them, something real and strong. The following day, Trevor needed to go into town for supplies, and he asked Rebecca if she wanted to come along. She hesitated, worried about being seen, but Trevor assured her that Carver would not dare cause trouble in town where there were witnesses and a sheriff. Brownsville was a bustling town near the Rio Grande, with wide dirt streets lined with wooden buildings. The general store, the saloon, the church, the hotel, all showed signs of a community that was growing and prospering. Trevor helped Rebecca down from the wagon, his hand lingering on hers perhaps a moment longer than necessary. Inside the general store, Trevor introduced Rebecca to the owner, a friendly woman named Martha Sullivan. "This is Miss Rebecca Owens. She is staying out at my place for a while." Martha's eyebrows rose with interest, but she was too polite to pry. "Nice to meet you, Miss Owens. If you need anything while you are in town, you just let me know." While Trevor ordered supplies, Rebecca browsed the store, looking at things she could not afford. Martha came over to her, speaking quietly. "I hope you do not mind me asking, but are you looking for work?" "My cousin runs the hotel and they need someone to help in the dining room. The pay is not much, but it is honest work." Rebecca felt a surge of hope. "I might be interested. Can you give me more details?" Martha explained the position, and it sounded perfect for someone in Rebecca's situation. It would give her a means to earn money, to become independent, even while staying at Trevor's ranch. When they left the store, Rebecca told Trevor about the opportunity. "I think I should take it. I do not want to rely on your charity forever." Trevor looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded. "If that is what you want. Though you should know you are already earning your keep at the ranch. I have never eaten so well or had such a clean house." Rebecca smiled. "Still, I would like to have my own money. It would make me feel more secure." "I understand," Trevor said, and she could tell he meant it. That evening, as they ate dinner together, Trevor seemed more quiet than usual. Rebecca finally asked him what was wrong. "I have been thinking," he said slowly, "about Dutch Carver, about what he tried to do to you. It makes me angry, Rebecca, and it makes me worried. Men like that do not just give up. You think he might still come looking for me? I do not know, but I want to be prepared if he does." Trevor paused, then met her eyes. "I want you to learn to shoot." Rebecca blinked in surprise. "A gun?" "Yes. Every woman out here should know how to protect herself. I will teach you. Not just shooting, but gun safety, how to handle a weapon properly." The idea was intimidating, but Rebecca saw the wisdom in it. "All right, teach me." The next afternoon, Trevor set up targets behind the barn and brought out his spare rifle. He showed Rebecca how to hold it, how to sight down the barrel, how to breathe and squeeze the trigger slowly. The first shot startled her so much she nearly dropped the gun, but Trevor was right there, steadying her. "It is all right. The kick takes getting used to. Try again." Over the next hour, Rebecca fired again and again, her shots gradually getting more accurate. Trevor stood close behind her, adjusting her stance, guiding her aim, and Rebecca found herself very aware of his presence, of his warmth, of the way his voice sounded right near her ear. "You are a natural," Trevor said after she hit the target 3 times in a row. "Better than I was when I first learned." Rebecca turned to smile at him and realized how close they were standing. She could see flecks of gold in his brown eyes, could see the slight stubble on his jaw. Her breath caught, and she saw his gaze drop to her lips. For a moment they stood frozen, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Trevor stepped back, clearing his throat. "You did well today. We will practice again tomorrow." Rebecca felt a mix of disappointment and relief. Part of her had wanted him to kiss her, but part of her knew they needed to take things slowly. There was too much at stake, and she was still vulnerable from everything that had happened. The days turned into weeks, and autumn deepened into early winter. Rebecca started working at the hotel 3 days a week, saving every penny she earned. On her days off, she kept house for Trevor, and in the evenings they continued their talks by the fire. Gradually, Rebecca found herself opening up to him about things she had never told anyone, about her fears and dreams, about the guilt she felt over leaving St. Louis, about her worries for the future. Trevor listened to everything she said, really listened, and he shared his own vulnerabilities in return. He told her about the loneliness of the past 4 years, about the pressure of running the ranch alone, about his fear that he might never have a family of his own. "Why do you think you would not?" Rebecca asked one night. Trevor shrugged. "Most women want a man who is established, successful. I am barely keeping this place going, and I am not exactly a smooth talker." "You are doing better than you think," Rebecca said softly, "on both counts." Their eyes met, and this time neither of them looked away. Slowly, Trevor reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough and calloused from work, but his touch was gentle. "Rebecca, I know it has not been long, but I need you to know how I feel. Having you here, it has changed everything for me." "You have changed everything. I think I am falling in love with you." Rebecca's heart soared even as her eyes filled with tears. "I feel the same way. I have tried to tell myself it is too soon, that I need to be practical. But Trevor, when I am with you, I feel like I am home. For the first time since my parents died, I feel like I belong somewhere." Trevor stood and pulled her gently to her feet, then cupped her face in his hands. "May I kiss you?" "Yes," Rebecca whispered. The kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise and restrained passion. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I do not want to rush you," Trevor said. "We can take as much time as you need." "I know," Rebecca said, "and I appreciate that. But Trevor, I already know what I want. I want this. I want you. I want a life here." "Then stay," Trevor said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not as someone earning her keep, but as my partner, my wife, if you will have me." Rebecca laughed through her tears. "That is quite a proposal." "It is not how I planned it," Trevor admitted. "I was going to do something more romantic, but I cannot wait any longer. Rebecca Owens, will you marry me?" "Yes," Rebecca said immediately. "Yes, absolutely yes." They kissed again, longer this time, deeper, and Rebecca felt like her heart might burst from happiness. Everything she had been through, all the pain and fear and uncertainty, had led her to this moment, to this man, to this feeling of coming home. But their happiness was interrupted 2 days later when trouble arrived at the ranch gates. Rebecca was hanging laundry when she heard horses approaching. She looked up to see 3 men riding toward the house, and her blood ran cold when she recognized the man in the lead, Dutch Carver. She dropped the laundry and ran for the house, her heart pounding. "Trevor! Trevor, he is here!" Trevor emerged from the barn, saw the riders, and his face hardened. "Get inside, get my rifle. If anything happens to me, you know how to use it." "Trevor, no," Rebecca said, grabbing his arm. "There are 3 of them. I will be fine. Just do what I said and stay out of sight." Rebecca reluctantly went inside, retrieving the rifle and positioning herself by the window where she could see but not be easily seen. Her hands shook as she held the gun, remembering everything Trevor had taught her. Outside, Trevor stood in the yard, his hand resting casually on his holstered pistol as the 3 men dismounted. Dutch Carver was a big man with a mean face and cold eyes. The 2 men with him looked like hired thugs. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Trevor asked, his voice level. "I am looking for a woman," Carver said. "Dark hair, early 20s. She stole from me and ran off a few weeks back. I tracked her to this area." "Is that so?" Trevor said. "What exactly did she steal? That is between me and her. Now, is she here or not?" "Even if she was, which I am not saying she is, what makes you think I would turn a woman over to a man like you?" Carver's face darkened. "A man like me? You do not know anything about me." "I know your reputation, Carver. I know how you treat people. And I know when a man is lying through his teeth about theft to cover up something worse. You calling me a liar, if the boot fits." One of Carver's men moved his hand toward his gun, but Carver held up a hand to stop him. "I do not want trouble, Owens. I just want what is mine." "She is not yours. She is not anyone's. She is her own person, and she is under my protection. So you can turn around and ride out of here, or we can settle this another way. Your choice." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Rebecca watched from the window, her finger on the trigger, praying it would not come to violence but ready to shoot if it did. Finally, Carver laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You are making a big mistake, Owens. She is nothing but trouble, but fine, keep her. When she runs out on you or steals you blind, do not say I did not warn you. I will take my chances. Now get off my property." Carver remounted his horse, his men following suit. "You have not heard the last of this." "Yeah, I think I have," Trevor said calmly. The 3 men rode away, and Trevor stood watching until they were out of sight. Only then did Rebecca rush out of the house and into his arms. "I was so scared," she said, trembling. "I thought he was going to draw on you. He is a bully, but he is not stupid. He knows that if he killed me, the sheriff would hang him, and he knows I am a faster draw than he is." Trevor held her close, stroking her hair. "It is over now. He will not come back. How can you be sure?" "Because he is the kind of man who only fights when he knows he will win. He saw that I am willing to stand against him, and he does not have the stomach for a real fight." Rebecca wanted to believe him, but she could not shake the feeling of unease. That night, she barely slept, jumping at every sound. Trevor held her in his arms, something they had not done before, but it felt right and necessary. "I am sorry I brought this trouble to your door," Rebecca whispered in the darkness. You did not bring trouble. You brought light. You brought life. Carver brought trouble and I sent him packing. That is the end of it. Over the next few weeks, life returned to normal, and Rebecca's fears gradually subsided. She and Trevor began planning their wedding, which they decided to hold in the spring. Martha Sullivan offered to help with the arrangements, thrilled to have a wedding to organize. Rebecca continued working at the hotel, and with her savings combined with Trevor's income from the ranch, they were starting to build a solid financial foundation. More importantly, they were building a life together, filled with laughter and love and the kind of companionship that made even mundane tasks feel special. Christmas came, and Trevor surprised Rebecca with a beautiful cameo brooch that had belonged to his mother. Rebecca gave him a new hat she had bought with her wages, and they spent the day together, cooking a feast and enjoying each other's company. As they sat by the fire that night, Rebecca felt a contentment she had never known before. I keep thinking about the night you found me at your gate. If I had collapsed somewhere else, if someone else had found me. But they did not, Trevor said, pulling her close. I found you and you found me. I do not believe in fate necessarily, but I believe that sometimes things happen for a reason. You were meant to be here, Rebecca, with me. I believe that too, she said, tilting her face up to kiss him. Winter gave way to spring, and the wedding day arrived. It was a simple ceremony at the church in Brownsville, attended by the few friends they had made in town and the ranch hands from Trevor's property. Rebecca wore a dress that Martha had helped her make, white with lace trim, and she carried wildflowers that Trevor had picked that morning. As they stood before the minister and said their vows, Rebecca felt tears of joy streaming down her face. When Trevor slipped the ring on her finger, a simple gold band, she thought her heart might burst. I now pronounce you man and wife, the minister said. You may kiss your bride. Trevor did not need to be told twice. He kissed Rebecca thoroughly, to the applause and whistles of the guests, and when they finally broke apart, both of them were grinning like fools. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food prepared by several of the townswomen. There was music and dancing, and Rebecca had never felt so happy, so surrounded by community and love. That night, as they finally retired to the bedroom they would now share as husband and wife, Trevor carried Rebecca over the threshold. He set her down gently and cupped her face in his hands. I love you, Mrs. Owens, he said softly. I love you too, Mr. Owens, she replied, and they came together in a kiss that quickly deepened into something more passionate. Their wedding night was everything Rebecca had hoped it would be, tender and loving and full of discovery. Trevor was patient and attentive, making sure she felt safe and cherished. When they finally fell asleep in each other's arms as the sun began to rise, Rebecca knew that she had truly found her home. The months that followed were busy and productive. Rebecca quit her job at the hotel to focus full-time on being a ranch wife, which turned out to be far more work than she had anticipated. She learned to preserve food, to tend a vegetable garden, to help with the animals when needed. She was not just keeping house anymore, but truly partnering with Trevor in running the ranch. They hired another ranch hand as the herd grew, and with the extra help, Trevor was able to spend more time with Rebecca. They would take rides together in the evenings, exploring the land, talking about their dreams for the future. I want children, Rebecca said one evening as they sat on a hill watching the sunset. At least 3 or 4. That sounds perfect, Trevor said, pulling her close. I want our children to grow up with siblings, with family. I want them to know they are loved and wanted. They will, Rebecca promised. We will make sure of it. A few months later, Rebecca realized that her monthly courses had not come. She waited another week to be sure, then told Trevor the news over breakfast. "I think I am with child," she said, her voice trembling with excitement and nervousness. Trevor's face lit up like the sun. He stood so quickly he nearly knocked over his chair, then pulled Rebecca to her feet and spun her around. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor. All the signs are there." Trevor set her down carefully, suddenly afraid of handling her too roughly. "We need to be careful. You need to rest more. I will hire someone to help with the house." "Trevor, I am pregnant, not made of glass," Rebecca laughed. "But yes, maybe some help would be nice as I get further along." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and as Rebecca's belly grew, so did their excitement. They spent evenings planning the nursery, picking out names, imagining what their child would look like. "If it is a boy, I want to name him after my father," Trevor said. "Thomas." "And if it is a girl," Rebecca asked, "you choose. Whatever name you want." "Rose," Rebecca said immediately. "After my mother." As summer turned to fall, Rebecca grew large and uncomfortable, but she had never been happier. The baby kicked strongly, and Trevor loved to put his hand on her belly and feel the movements. "He is going to be strong," Trevor would say. "Or she," Rebecca would counter, smiling. In early October, Rebecca's labor began. Trevor rode frantically to fetch the midwife from town, a capable woman named Mrs. Henderson who had delivered dozens of babies. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Trevor, pacing outside the bedroom door, feared he might lose either Rebecca or the baby or both. But finally, after nearly 20 hours, he heard the thin wail of a newborn, and Mrs. Henderson called him in. Rebecca lay exhausted on the bed, her hair damp with sweat, but she was smiling as she held a small bundle in her arms. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Trevor approached on shaking legs and looked down at the tiny red face of his child. Thomas Trevor Owens had arrived, perfect and healthy, with a full head of dark hair and his mother's nose. "He is beautiful," Trevor whispered, tears streaming down his face. "You are both beautiful. Rebecca, thank you. Thank you for this gift." Rebecca reached up to touch his face. "We made him together. Our son." Trevor leaned down to kiss her gently, then placed a soft kiss on his son's forehead. In that moment, he understood what it meant to have your heart walking around outside your body. He would do anything, sacrifice anything, to protect these two people. The next few months were exhausting but wonderful. Thomas was a good baby, healthy and growing quickly. Rebecca proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving, and Trevor discovered depths of tenderness in himself he had not known existed. When Thomas was 6 months old, Rebecca told Trevor that she was expecting again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Their daughter, Rose Rebecca Owens, was born on a warm spring day, coming so quickly that Mrs. Henderson barely made it in time. "You have a gift for making beautiful babies," Mrs. Henderson told them as she placed Rose in Rebecca's arms. "This one is perfect too." Rose had her father's brown eyes and a sunny disposition that made everyone who met her smile. Thomas, now a toddler, was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help care for her. As their family grew, so did the ranch. Trevor proved to be an excellent cattleman, and word of his fair dealing and quality stock spread throughout Texas. They were not rich, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. Years passed in a blur of childhood milestones and ranch work. Thomas grew into a serious boy who loved the animals and followed his father everywhere. Rose was more adventurous, always getting into mischief and charming her way out of trouble. When Thomas was 5 and Rose was 3, Rebecca gave birth to another son, whom they named Henry after Trevor's father. 3 years after that came another daughter, Anne, and then their final child, a son named James. With 5 children, the house was always noisy and chaotic, but it was filled with love. Rebecca sometimes looked at her brood and marveled at how her life had turned out. She had left St. Louis with nothing but dreams and desperation, had nearly died in the Texas brush, and had been found by a lonely cowboy who opened not just his gate but his heart. Trevor watched Rebecca with their children and fell more in love with her every day. She had given him everything he had ever wanted, and things he had not even known to dream of. Their partnership had only grown stronger over the years, built on mutual respect and deep affection. One evening, after all the children were finally asleep, Trevor and Rebecca sat on the porch together, watching the stars come out. Rebecca leaned her head on his shoulder and he wrapped his arm around her. "You ever think about that night?" Trevor asked. "The night I found you." "All the time," Rebecca said. "I think about how cold I was, how scared, and I think about how you saved me, not just my life but my whole future." "You saved me too," Trevor said. "I was just existing before you came along. You taught me how to really live." "We saved each other," Rebecca said, tilting her face up to kiss him. "And we built this beautiful life together." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds, the distant lowing of cattle, the chirp of crickets, the occasional cry of a child having a dream. "I am grateful every day," Trevor said finally. "For you, for our children, for this life. I never imagined I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Rebecca said. "When I was running through the dark that night, I thought my life was over. I never imagined it was actually just beginning." As the years continued to pass, their children grew and thrived. Thomas took naturally to ranching and became Trevor's right-hand man by the time he was a teenager. Rose shocked everyone by declaring she wanted to be a teacher, and Rebecca helped her study so she could pass the examinations. Henry inherited his father's calm demeanor, while Anne got her mother's determination. James, the baby, was spoiled by everyone and grew up knowing he was loved beyond measure. The ranch continued to prosper, growing from a modest operation to one of the most successful in the area. Trevor and Rebecca became pillars of the Brownsville community, known for their fairness, their generosity, and the example they set of a strong, loving marriage. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Trevor took Rebecca back to the spot where he had found her that cold November night. The gate was still there, though it had been repaired and repainted many times over the years. "This is where it all began," Trevor said, taking Rebecca's hand. "This is where I found you." "This is where we found each other," Rebecca corrected, squeezing his hand. They stood together in the fading light, remembering that night, remembering how far they had come. Their 5 children were at home with Mrs. Henderson, who still helped them out occasionally despite her advancing age. Tomorrow they would return to the bustle and noise of family life, but tonight was just for them. "I would do it all again," Rebecca said. "Every hardship, every moment of fear if it meant ending up here with you." "So would I," Trevor said, pulling her into his arms. "1,000 times over." They kissed as the sun set over the Texas landscape. 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting and true. As they grew older, they watched their children marry and start families of their own. Thomas married a rancher's daughter and built his own spread adjacent to his father's land. Rose indeed became a teacher and married a lawyer from San Antonio. Henry took over the day-to-day operations of the ranch, while Anne married a banker and moved to Houston. James, surprising everyone, became a doctor and set up practice in Brownsville. Trevor and Rebecca became grandparents many times over, and their house was always full of visiting children and grandchildren. Rebecca loved having a full table again, cooking huge meals and watching the next generation play in the same yard where her own children had played. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. There were speeches and toasts, and when it was Trevor's turn to speak, he stood and pulled Rebecca to her feet beside him. 25 years ago, I was a lonely man running a ranch by myself, thinking that was all life had to offer me. Then one cold November night, I found this woman collapsed at my gate. I opened that gate and I opened my heart and my whole world changed. Rebecca, you have given me a lifetime of happiness. You have given me children and grandchildren, love and partnership, purpose and joy. I thank God every day for bringing you to my gate. There was not a dry eye in the room when he finished, least of all Rebecca's. She stood on her toes to kiss him, not caring that all their children and grandchildren were watching. I love you, she whispered against his lips. Today and always. Today and always, he echoed. As they moved into their later years, Trevor and Rebecca finally stepped back from the active management of the ranch, turning it over to Henry and Thomas. They spent their days doing the things they loved: gardening, reading, taking slow rides around the property, and most of all, enjoying each other's company. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, something they had done countless times over the decades, Rebecca took Trevor's hand. "You remember what I said that first week I was here, about feeling at home for the first time since my parents died?" "I remember," Trevor said. "I still feel that way, every single day. This place, this life, it is all home to me." "You are home to me too," Trevor said. "You always have been." They sat together as the stars came out, two old lovers who had weathered everything life threw at them and come out stronger for it. Their children were successful and happy. Their grandchildren were healthy and thriving. The ranch they had built together would continue for generations. When Trevor passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 79, Rebecca grieved deeply, but found comfort in their children and grandchildren. She lived another 5 years, long enough to meet several great-grandchildren, long enough to see the ranch continue to flourish, long enough to know that the legacy she and Trevor had built would endure. On a warm spring day, Rebecca Owens closed her eyes for the last time, surrounded by family, at peace with her life, and ready to rejoin the man she had loved for over half a century. She was laid to rest beside Trevor in the cemetery in Brownsville, under a large oak tree, their headstones side by side just as they had lived their lives. The inscription on Rebecca's headstone, chosen by her children, reads simply, "She found home in the heart of a cowboy." And on Trevor's, "He found love at his gate and never let it go." Their great-great-grandchildren still run the ranch to this day, a testament to what two people can build when they open not just their gates but their hearts. The story of how Trevor found Rebecca on that cold November night, how a lonely cowboy saved a desperate woman and they saved each other, has been passed down through generations. A reminder that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a simple act of kindness and courage. The old gate where it all began was eventually replaced, but the new owners of each generation have always kept a gate in that spot, a memorial to the place where their family's story truly started. And on cold November nights, when the wind blows through the Texas brush, some say you can almost see two figures standing by that gate, holding hands, looking at each other with the kind of love that transcends time and death. Because real love, the kind that opens hearts and builds families and creates legacies, never truly dies. It lives on in the children and grandchildren, in the stories told around dinner tables, in the values passed down through generations. Trevor and Rebecca's love story did not end when their lives did. It continued in every marriage in their family, in every act of kindness, in every moment when someone chose to open their gate and their heart to someone in need. That is the true magic of love. It does not just change two people. It ripples out through time, touching lives that will never know the original lovers but benefit from the example they set. Trevor and Rebecca never became rich or famous. They never did anything that made the history books. But they loved each other truly and raised their children well, and in doing so, they changed their little corner of the world forever. And sometimes, that is the greatest achievement of all.